going on? My name is Harrison, and this is going to be an Unreal Engine 4 C++ tutorial on how to pick up and rotate an object similar to how they do it in Gone Home. Let's go ahead and launch Gone Home right now. I already have it running. Gone Home, again, made by Steve Gaynor and the rest of the Fulbright team. Excellent game. Definitely try it out if you haven't yet. So right now, one of the main mechanics is that you get to pick up an object and rotate and kind of inspect it. So right now, I just started the game, entered the house, and we have the duck right here. So if I right click, I can zoom in. I can zoom in on the object. I can also pick up the object with E. And now when I click the zoom button, I can rotate it, inspect it, and when I'm done with it, I can throw it back down. Very, very cool. Let's get out of that and let's see how it runs in UE4. So right now, this is going to be the final product running in Unreal. Let's click play. So right now we have the draw debug helpers to draw that green line for us. So if we're close enough to the object, we click E, we can grab it. Click the inspect button, now we can rotate it. And when we want to get rid of it, we click E again to throw it away. And now if we don't have the object, we right click or click left shift and we can zoom in. So let me go ahead and delete this from the game world and recreate it in C++. Okay, so I deleted everything from my game world, so let's go ahead and recreate this pickup class. And just to reiterate, I am using the standard first-person template with starter content. And you don't have to watch these videos. There should be a GitHub link down in the description below, so if you want to just grab the code and move along, you definitely can. But if not, let's go ahead and move along with the video. So first, to set up our character, let's go ahead and go into Edit. Go into Project Settings. Go into Input. And then go into Action Mappings. And now we're going to create two buttons. Plus, I'm just going to call it Action. And I'm going to bind it to the E key. Where is it? The E key there. And then we're going to add another one. I'm going to call it Inspect. And we're going to bind that to the right click. Let's do left shift. Let's get that one in there. Left shift, and then we're going to do right click. Mouse, right mouse button. Right? Yeah, right mouse button. Alright, so it should save immediately. Let's go ahead and get out of that. Now let's right click, create a new class, choose actor, next, and let's just call it pickup. And create class. Okay, awesome. The engine just created the files for us. It opened up my IDE of choice. I have Visual Studio Code as my IDE of choice. And let's go ahead and jump to the header file and start creating this pickup. First thing we're going to want to do is, I believe we're going to want to include the camera actor component. We're going to grab that from the player so we can grab the forward vector from it. So that's, no, it's not slash, it's a component, right? Component slash camera component. H. And now let's jump down to the public section and start creating our variables. U property, edit anywhere. It's going to be a UStatic mesh component. Pointer, just call it my mesh for now. We're also going to get a scene component, which will be a dummy component for our placement. Edit anywhere. It will be a uScene component, and we're going to call it holding comp. That should suffice. Let's do a uFunction. It will be void rotate actor. Do another uFunction. void pickup. And now let's create some bools. Bool be holding, whether we're holding the object or not. Bool be gravity, whether the actor should have gravity enabled or not. Let's get an F rotator. It's going to be our control rotation that we're getting from our controller. We're going to get a character, so we're going to get our player character to get our scene components and our forward vectors and the control rotation. Later on, my character, camera component. Let's get this a little bit more. Pointer, player camera, we'll call it. And then let's get a vector for the forward vector. That should be it for the header file. Save that. Let's jump into the CPP file. Alright, so what do we have to do here? The first thing we need to do is include game framework character. So we'll be using a character later on. Now let's go ahead into our constructor file and set up the default values. So my mesh, we're going to want to create a sub default component, a create default sub object. That will be a uStack mesh component. Get some text in there and just go ahead and call it my mesh. From the onset, by default, we'll want to simulate physics. So we'll use the set simulate physics function. Set that to true. And then we're also going to want it to be our root component. And then just to do some housekeeping, let's do set be holding will be false as soon as it's dragged into the game world, and then be gravity will be true. Because we'll toggle those later on. We got be holding, be gravity. Alright, let's jump into the begin play function. So as soon as we push play, we want to get this dummy component. We'll create it later when we jump into the character files, but there's going to be dummy, just a scene component that's going to really just hold the place for when we're holding the object. Now we'll set the location for our pickup object. So let's go ahead and get that started. So my character equals my character. No, my character equals gameplay statics. Get player character. It'll be referring to this character, and we want the first player. And the player camera will be equal to my character, arrow operator, find component by class, and we want the UCamera component. Alright, so now we just got the character. We could probably do the same thing for this scene component, but let's go ahead and loop through components just to practice that. Use scene component, pointer, components, and for my character, we're going to want to get components. And that's going to put it into our components T array, which is full of scene components. Now if it's not null, or if the number of them is greater than 0. What is it? .num. Now we're going to loop through them. For each component, we'll call comp. And if one of these are equal to the holding component, that's what we're saying our holding comp as. So if comp. Let's get the name. Now if that name equals holding component, which again, we'll name that later on when we jump to the character file. Component, did I spell that right? One word, component. Now let's set holding component to that component. Holding comp equals cast. Is that right? No, we need the arrows. Scene component. And it'll be equal to comp, because this comp is this thing right here when we're looping through the T array of components that we pulled from the character. Let's get my semicolons in there. Did I miss any more semicolons? Hopefully not. Let's move on. Let's go ahead into our tick function. So if beholding is true, so if this pickup is being held, and holding comp is true, that we didn't make a mistake, and we do have a place for this. We're going to set actor rotation. Let me just minute. Set actor location and rotation. There we go. Holding comp. Get component location. That will be the location. Now we're going to do holding comp. Get component rotation. Down there. There we go. So you might just want to get the location at this instance, but I'll just do location and rotation just for the heck of it. Save that. All right, now let's go into the rotate actor function. So this will be void a pickup rotate actor. It's void, so there's no parameters. So the control rotation variable that we defined in our header file, let's go ahead and define that. That's going to equal get world, get first player controller, and then get control rotation. And now if we're calling this function, we're going to set the actor rotation right there. And that's going to equal to an f quat. And then we're going to give it into the f vector of the control rotation. Semicolon there. I think we're good to go. That's a very simple function, but it'll do a lot for us. Now let's do our pickup function, which will just be a lot of bools toggling. Did I do that right? Pickup. I probably shouldn't have the function called the same thing as the class, but that's all right. All right for now. Beholding. So every time these are true, every time it's called, we're going to toggle beholding, and then we're going to toggle be gravity. And then we're going to affect the my mesh. You know, we're going to toggle gravity and some collisions as well, just to kind of make sure that we're not colliding with too many things and too many things are happening, and then we'll toggle them back when it's going back to the game role. So when we're holding it, I believe I'm like toggling away gravity and toggling away collision, just to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the collision capsule or the player itself. So my mesh set enable gravity. What is it? Is it enable gravity? There we go. That's going to be set to be gravity. My mesh set simulate physics. Simulate physics. If beholding is true, this will be false. If it's false, it will be true. I believe, yeah. My mesh arrow operator set collision enabled. If beholding is If beholding is true, then we're going to do e collision e-collision enabled. That's going to be no collision, so we don't collide with the player. So if beholding is true, there's no collision, but if it's false, it will be an e-collision query and physics. Query and physics. Okay, there we should be good right there. The semicolon's a little weird, just for spacing. There we go. Alright, so if beholding is false, because we toggled it up above, then let's go ahead and throw this thing. And we're going to get the forward vector from the player camera. Get forward vector. Is that right? Player camera. No, it'll be player camera arrow operator. Get forward vector. And now we're going to add force to the mesh. Add force, forward vector, times 1,000 or 10,000. What do I like? It's like 100,000. That should be fine. Then multiplied by my mesh's mass. That should give us a little throw when we're done with the object. I think that's it for the pickup class. Let's go ahead and save that, compile it, and see if we get any errors. Alright, we got some errors. Let me see what's up. Component, camera component, no such file. It's in the header file. Okay, let me check that out. Yeah, that's my bad. I had it right like as very beginning. It's not a component, it's camera. So I think we should be good now, but let's see. Not create default object, it should be create default sub object. Create default sub object, right? And it's a lowercase o. Alright, gameplay statics is not a class or namespace. Yeah, I think I need to declare this. I think I kind of noticed that while working that. Need to include this in the pickup file, I believe. Include Kismet gameplay statics .h. Get first person must point to a class or function. Okay, we're in 62 now. So this gameplay statics, that's gonna run this right here. Now 62 there's an error. Get first player controller. Is that right? Where is it? Is it in the rotate actor? Oh, get world. Let me use some parentheses right there. Now we should be good with this pickup function. Alright, that's good. Now let's jump into our player function. Alright, we can get out of pickup. Let's jump into your character's header file. Now let's set it up here. Alright, what's the first thing we need for this guy? the first thing we need is that we're going to be referring to the new class we just created, so we're going to include the pickup.h. That should be simple enough. And now let's go ahead, while we're defining all of our components, let's go ahead and jump to the very last one and create our own dummy component. It'll just be a simple U property, edit anywhere. Let's call a class UScene component. Let's call it a holding component. And that should be that. Under begin plate, we're going to want to use the tick function in the character, so we're going to want to override it. So let's do a virtual override for the tick. It'll be tick float delta seconds. Override. So right here in the public section, let's go ahead and define our variables. The first one will be our pickup item, and it'll be U property. Let's just go ahead and call it edit anywhere as well, just in case. It's going to be a class, a pickup pointer, and we'll just call it current item because it'll be the current item that we're holding or rotating. Now let's define a bunch of bools. B can move, if the player can move or not, because we'll be inspecting objects. Bool, B holding item, are we holding an item? B inspecting. Let me get this up a little bit. Float, pitch max. These will relate to our camera's rotation, min and max. F vector, holding comp, F rotator, last rotation, so we can return the player back to normal when we're done rotating an object. F vector start, F vector forward vector. This is for just drawing our debugs, or drawing our debug line. F vector end, F hit result. What do we hit when we get back our line trace? And let's set up our default query params. F component query params. I believe these are optional when you're doing a line trace, but we'll just create some defaults. Component query params. F collision response params. Let's call those default response params. Alright, let's continue. Under on fire, let's create our input functions. We're going to have on action. Then we're going to have void on inspect. And then a void on capital O, just to be consistent. On inspect released, I believe is what I have it called. Yeah, let's move on. Let's create two more functions at the bottom here. It'll just be void toggle movement. And void toggle item pickup. Do I have it responded? I believe that's it for the header file. Let's go ahead and jump into the CPP file. Nope, that's the wrong one. The character CPP file. Is this it? Yeah. The first thing you're going to want to do is include draw debug helpers, so we can see what we're creating or see where our line trace is. Draw debug helpers. .h. in the constructor function, the first thing for the character, we'll set up our component and declare some default values for our bools. Holding component, that's going to equal create default subobject, and it's going to be a UC component. Add some text. Might as well just call it holding component. Semicolon. You can set the relative. I'm going to set the relative location. You can set it to whatever you want. I think while we're holding a gun in this example, I think I just kind of set the X to be a little offset. It'll be offset by 50 unreal units. And we're going to attach this to the muzzle. Set up attachment. FP muzzle location. So we're attaching it to the muzzle. You can attach it to whatever component you want. I'm attaching it to the muzzle so we can kind of borrow its idle animation when you're kind of walking, so the object kind of bobs up and down. So by default, current item will be null. B can move will be true. And then B inspecting will be false. Alright, let's jump into the begin play function. Hey, my apologies for the quick jump cut. I had to end the video a little early, go to work, and come back, and so now it's a new day. But let's pick up right where we left off. So right now, what I want to do is I want to set the pitch max and our pitch min variables, because by default, the camera is locked at 90 degrees and negative 90 degrees. So in the first person mode, when you look around, you're not looking in circles. So that's good, except what's bad is that when we want to rotate the object, we want the whole 360 degrees. So one, we're going to have to set back those parameters later, but then when we go back to the controller, we want to set the min and max values to like negative 79 and positive 179 to get the whole 360 degrees. So it'll probably make sense later, but right now let's just when we begin play, let's immediately set these values so then we can get them back later on. We want to give it back to the player when he's back in the first person shooter mode. Now it'll be pitch max, get world, get first player controller, player manager, player camera manager, and that's view pitch max. Now let's do the same thing for view pitch min. That'll be pitch min. This will be view pitch min. Alright, now let's jump into the tick function. Alright, we have to define that. Void. What's our character? That's character tick. Alright, super tick delta time. Semicolon. Alright, so right now we're going to create the variables and create our line that draws out for our visual representation of our line trace. Get the camera's location. Let's get the forward vector of the camera. First person camera component, get forward vector, and it will end So we're going to start it where the camera component is, and then we're going to end it 200 Unreal units away from our starting position, and it will be going wherever the camera is facing forward. Now let's run the draw debug line function. We're going to do this on every frame. Give it whatever color you want. We'll call it green for now. False, so it's not always there, and it's going to last for 1 second and fill out the rest of the params. Now we're good to go. So now let's go through our bool functions that I'll run every tick, and this will determine if we're holding an object, if we're zooming, and if we are, what we're going to do based on those conditions. So if I'm not holding an item, let's get this up a little bit. What is it? It's get world. Get world line trace single by channel. So if we hit something, so if we're not holding something, and if we hit something, then we will continue with our code. Default, I call it default query params, and then default is response params, right? Default response params. So if we get something, let's check to see if it's a pickup class. We do hit get actor because the hit is defined right here. This is our hit result. So hit dot get actor. Let's get the class of the actor, and if it's a child of our pickup class, a pickup static class. So if all that is true, we'll set our current item to our hit.getActor, or we'll cast it rather. Cast a pickup hit.getActor. Okay, that should be it for that one. So whenever we're line tracing or whenever we're not holding something, we're checking to see if we can pick up an object. And ever when that is not true, we're going to set current item to false, because if we set current item to the current actor, then we want to return it to null when we're looking away from it. And then if we're inspecting something, so basically when we push shift or the right click, so if we're inspecting it and if we're holding it, we're going to run the following code. First person camera component, arrow operator, set field of view, we're going to use a lerp so we smoothly transition. This is just a check right now. First person camera component, whatever the field of view is at, field of view. Get it back to its standard 90 degrees. Holding component, set relative location, Again, you can set these numbers to whatever you want. I'm just going to put it in front of the player, center it 50 degrees up and 50 degrees in front. Or 50 unrow units rather, not degrees. So that's if we're holding something and we're inspecting it, we're going to put it then in front of the player's camera so we can then rotate it. Get world, get first person, get first player controller, right? Player camera manager. View pitch max. And we're going to set it to 179.9000002. We're going to do it again, but for pitch min. So I'm just going to copy it. And instead of a positive 179, we'll do a negative 179. Current item, rotate actor. And we'll create this function in a second. Okay, because rotate actor, that will set the current item rotation to the controller's rotation, whether that's your mouse or your joystick. And then again, if we're not holding anything, then we just want to zoom in the camera, and we'll use that by doing the field of view. First person camera component, set field of view. That will be fmath. Using lerp for a smooth transition, so it's not a jump. First person player camera component, field of view, and we're wanting Ghana going to 45 at 0.1. Okay, very cool. And so if we're not inspecting anything, we want to make sure that we bring the camera out, or we return the current item back to its holding position. So I'll probably just copy some of this just to speed it up. So again, so if we're inspecting and we're at the 45 degrees for our field of view, we want to then pull it back to the original 90. But if we're holding something, if the holding item, we want to put the position, set relative location. We're not using lerp for this because it's just more of a jump. But again, if you want to smooth it out, you can use lerp here if you want to. 0.0f. Okay, I think that should be good. Let's move on. All right, we're getting into our players right here. All right, let's set up our binding. I'm just going to copy and paste it for copy and paste the fire, and we're going to replace the fire with action. I'm going to paste 2 more. This is bind action on inspect. The function will be on inspect. Again, put in inspect, and instead of IE pressed, it's going to be IE released. And I believe the function was called inspect released. Yeah. So that's our binding functions. So our buttons work. The next thing we're going to do on these move functions, where are they? Those are touch functions. So right here on move forward and move right, I'm going to add in a param, say B can move. Because when we're inspecting something or inspecting an object in front of us, we then want to prohibit the player from moving, so we can just inspect the object. look up, enable. All right, so now we're at the bottom of the script. Let's do our on action function. It's a CPP tuts character on action. So if current item is true and we are non-inspecting it, and how do you spell it? Inspecting. Let me get this up a little bit. So if current item is true and if we're not inspecting it, we're going to toggle pickup. So that either means we're going to grab it or we're going to throw it. And our pickup class will handle that action. Rather toggle item pickup, we're going to create that function later on. Again, that will toggle other things, that will toggle bools and toggle the pickups actions. So my fault. Alright, let's do it again. V void a CPP touch character on inspect. If we're holding something, we're immediately going to get the last rotation. Control. So as soon as we push the inspect, we want to get the current rotation of the controller so we can return the user back to its original position after we're done rotating the object we're inspecting. Since we are sharing those same numbers and the same mouse rotation or joystick rotation, that's why we're immediately grabbing this last rotation so the player isn't, that when we give the rotation back to the camera doesn't inherit a rotation that was meant for the object. A little confusing. I might not be the best at explaining it, but it's just to make sure that we return the player back to its original position rather than how we're manipulating it when rotating an object 360 degrees. Toggle movement. That's probably just toggling bools, but we'll create that in a second. Be inspecting. Be inspecting and set that to true. Void a CPP touch character on inspect released. If be inspecting and be holding item. So if we're inspecting something and we're holding something, what do? We want to get the controller, set control rotation to the last rotation, get world, get first person, get first player controller, player camera manager, view pitch max. Probably best to save that to a variable so you don't have to retype it every time. Pitch max, or just put in a function. Get world, just copy and paste it and do the same for min. Yeah, right here. Is that right above? Let me check above. Shoot. And my begin play function. Yeah. Alright. So we're returning the player back to that, and we're also going to want to toggle movement. Alright. Oh, let's just put B inspecting as false. And that will return the player back to its 90-degree field of view. Let's do our toggle movement function. B can move. That's going to equal its inverse. So if it's false, it'll be true. If it's true, it'll be false. Let me move my mouse. B inspecting. We'll toggle that as well. There we go. First person camera component. B use pawn control rotation. That's going to equal its inverse as well. Person camera component. B use pawn control. Alright, and then B use controller rotation. B use rotation, yeah, my fault. Rotation, yeah, and that's going to equal its inverse. B use controller rotation. So that's it for toggle movement. Now we have the one last function. Should be pretty quick. Void a CPP tuts. Where's my autocomplete? Whatever. Tuts character. Toggle item pickup. So if current item is true, we'll pick it up. Run the items pickup function, which will set its location. And if we're not holding something, because we pressed it again and we toggled that, because we're going to toggle this bool right here, and what this pickup does, it'll either bring it to us, or if it's false, we'll then throw it. So if it's false, then we want to set the current item to null, so then we can go back to the game world and pick up new objects, or pick up the same object again. Alright, that should be it for the code. Let's compile it, see the errors that we have, fix it, and move on, and finish this up. Alright, we got a bunch of errors, I assume. Draw a debug line. Alright, so we have 131 typo. That should be quick. Draw a debug. My bad. And then there's an error at 399. Get first player controller mispointed class. Alright, 399. 399. Get world, I make that mistake a lot. Let's finish that function. Alright, let's see if we have any errors. Nice. We got pretty lucky. Let's see if this works. Drag in the pickup to our class. Alright, so we have it here. Let's go ahead and set the mesh to a cone. No, my bad. Select it in your viewport. And now the static mesh. I think I'm going to prefer a cone. Let's set the material. I think I like text or hex or something. Hex tile pulse. That's kind of cool. I'm going to resize it. Make it a little bit smaller so we can do some stuff with it. And I think we should be good. So we have it there. We're walking around. We picked it up. I'm going to push zoom up, and I crashed. Close without sending. Open it back up. Alright, so it crashed when I picked it up. I probably missed a function somewhere. Hey, so I crashed the engine. It took me a while to find the bug, so let's go back in and correct my errors. So the first error is on the tick function right here. This else statement is hooked up to the wrong if statement, so cut that, paste it under this if statement, and that should now prevent the engine from crashing, because I was always trying to run a function from current item, but current item was always null. And then right down below that right here, this should not be max, should be min. Save that, let's recompile, and we should have a working build. Right, so shift to zoom in, right click to also zoom in. Now let's move closer to the object, E to pick it up. Now we're picking it up. Right click to hold down in front of us. Now we can rotate it with the mouse. We should have full rotation on it. And now when we're done with it, we can throw it away. So, very, very cool. So, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a very long video. I do appreciate it, and I will see you